Hello and welcome to 3 Minute Gaming. I'm Nathan, and today I'm going to tell you if this game's worth your time and bandwidth. Today's game is Diablo 3. The controversial game that had more than a few massive overhauls since its launch. Is Diablo 3 in its current state and with all of its expansions now worth checking out? Let's find out. Diablo 3 is an action RPG that deviates quite a bit from its predecessors, and is rather infamous for its disastrous launch, real money item shop, and brighter aesthetic. But it's been over a decade, so let's see what they've changed. The story is, well, it's the worst part of Diablo 3. While previous games were subtle, gothic, and dark, Diablo 3 feels more like a lighthearted Marvel movie most of the time. A comet that is actually an angel has fallen in Tristram, signifying that Diablo is going to come back yet again. So you, no longer just a normal human, but now a chosen one, registered trademark Nephilim, and up to 3 friends need to power up and kick Diablo back to hell. You have 7 classes this time around, one of them being DLC, with each falling into one of 3 primary types: int, strength, and dexterity. Unlike the previous games, you'll no longer raise individual stats when you level up. The game does it for you based on your class, and instead you'll be manipulating these stats primarily through gear. Skills have also been completely retooled. Rather than having skill trees you invest points into, each level grants you either a new skill to use for free or an augment to a skill, called a rune, that you can use to modify a previously earned skill. Each skill can only have 1 rune, and you can only have 6 skills and 4 passives equipped at a time, so the only real restrictions are your choices from the pool. Loot and gear are much more important this time around, with the new legendaries not only having massive stat boosts, but also often augmenting abilities in new and powerful ways. Get a hat that makes your pet shoot darts, or shoes that let the barbarian leap 3 times in a row. Legendaries are the primary way to customize your build, and thankfully they drop fairly often. The game's end game is its highlight, with an adventure mode that forgoes the campaign, and instead has you do mini missions called bounties across the act for resources, as well as rifts, which provide races against the clock to kill as much stuff as possible, and then a boss for potentially massive rewards. Combat is similar to the previous games on the surface, but the new skills are split into generators and spenders, as basically every class has their own unique resource pool that generates in different ways, and you then spend that resource on your bigger, punchier attacks. And there's certainly more to Diablo 3, but I'll be here all day, so suffice to say it's a streamlined version of the previous games in the series, with a greater focus on loot over skill builds, and a lot of player empowerment when it comes to that loot. So what do I like about Diablo 3? Well, the end game here is fantastic, so much so that I find myself crawling back to it every season to run rifts, farm bounties, and grind my character up into space. It feeds really well into that Skinner box number go up system, and is particularly fun with friends. Additionally, the ability to basically respec at any time, paired with item build guidance, not only allows for a lot of experimentation early on, but also makes this game much more accessible for newcomers to the genre. As an anecdote, my wife never really got into these ARPG style of games because she found them overwhelming, but she loves Diablo 3. And lastly, as someone who played the game on launch, it's been great to see how much effort Blizzard has put into this game to make it live up to its potential. When it comes to the bad, the aforementioned story is god-awful. There's no way around it. Its writing is childish and vapid, the character stereotypes, and the voice acting barely passable. Additionally, the game's aesthetic and graphics really don't hold up like in the previous games. It might be in part due to the more bright art style, but honestly, the game looked dated when it came out graphically, and it's only gotten worse over the past couple years without a facelift. And lastly, there is a lot less when it comes to extensive character customization when compared to other ARPGs. While I do like freely switching skills and modifiers, endgame builds are pretty much entirely dependent by set items, meaning your options won't change much from season to season, rather than encouraging endgame experimentation. As you know, I rate games here on a 3-point scale: must play, maybe consider, and don't bother. And while Diablo 3 had an infamously rocky start, now that a decade has passed, I think it's safe to say that it not only redeemed itself, but exceeded its expectations. Diablo 3 is an addicting, loot-driven power fantasy with a fantastic endgame and great seasonal content, meaning if you have any affinity for loot-driven action games, you should absolutely be playing Diablo 3. And that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Have you played Diablo 3? Did you play it back on launch like I did and not be able to sign in for a week? Man, what a magical time that was. But regardless, let me know in the comments, and then go out there and give Diablo 3 a look.